Hi, my name is Steve Rahi. I am a customer engineer focused on management technologies. Today's discussion is part 8 of an ongoing series discussing configuration profiles in Microsoft Intune, which of course is part of Microsoft Endpoint Manager. The focus of today's discussion will be kiosk mode, right, across all of the operating systems. So some of the configurations that you will see in configuration profiles will be focused on one operating system. Like maybe there's some settings for Windows that don't apply to iOS and Android. Kiosk mode is different in that it applies across the board, right? And there's other examples too, like Wi-Fi profiles and cert distribution and so on, right? So this one, we're going to talk about Windows, iOS, and Android in this session. All right. Another note about this session, so there's a bunch of devices that I'm going to show you kiosk mode configured on. So I've got 3 Windows PCs. Those are virtual machines, so not a big deal. I've got 2 iOS devices and 2 Android devices. And so trying to show you screen shares on all of those, I tried to figure out the best way. And so the way I'm going to do it is using a camera on an iPhone to kind of show you the screen. Hopefully that's workable and you can see everything. I think you can, but it won't be as good as just showing a screen like on a virtual machine. But hopefully, again, we'll make it work. And I'll try not to move the camera around too much as I'm showing you the screen. Anyway, all right. So let's get into it. So what's our agenda for this discussion? Similar to always, right? What we're going to talk about first, what kiosk mode actually is, why we care about it. Then we're going to get into kiosk mode, talk about the requirements, configuring in action. This will be broken down into sections based on the OS, and then we will be done. Okay, so what exactly is kiosk mode? Well, when you think about kiosk mode, you think about a device that has a fixed purpose, whatever that purpose is. It may be digital signage. It may be a device that runs a browser that you want to put in the hands of consumers to collect information or allow browsing a given website or whatever, right? So they serve specific purposes. Usually, well, I can't say usually what they are. I've seen kiosks for a lot of different purposes. And so really up to you. What I'm going to show you, just examples you can do with what you want, right? So kiosks, again, could be medical devices, could be ATMs, could be point of sales, right? The sky's the limit as to what they are, but they do have a specific purpose that you can define. And so when you think about a kiosk, you might think, well, it's a device now that's just going to have one app. Well, sometimes, maybe, right? Other times you might have a device that you need to make multiple apps available on, yet you want to control and tailor the user experience to just what you want. And so that's possible too. That's called multi-app kiosk versus single-app kiosk. And you'll see examples of that. Kiosk mode is cross-platform. So like I mentioned a moment ago, we're going to talk about Windows 10, right? Well, for Windows 10, when we say kiosk mode, really, in kiosk mode is an absolute scenario, but kiosk mode really is you can hear a couple of terms referred to it. You can hear app locker, right? You can hear assigned access. So if you look at our docs, you'll see that kiosk mode really is assigned access. It is. It also is app locker and so on, right? So it uses those technologies to achieve the kiosk scenario. For iOS, right, you have the ability to set up kiosk mode as well. Now, this does require that you have devices configured in supervised mode, and you'll hear me say that again probably as we go forward. Android. So Android is interesting. There are 2 scenarios where you can achieve kiosk mode. One is if you have devices enrolled as Android Enterprise dedicated devices. That's what I'm going to show you here. Another scenario is Android Enterprise fully managed devices. There's a little bit of a different pathway you can take to achieve that with fully managed devices. So what's also interesting is in some cases, like with Windows, you will see us call out settings for kiosk, right? For Apple, you will see us you'll see Intune has settings for kiosk. But then there's another variety of kiosk for iOS where it's not called kiosk, right? I'll explain that. Android, same way. You're not going to find a setting in our UI called kiosk. Doesn't exist, right? But you can certainly achieve that with Android. And again, I'll show you all this in the demo. Okay, so why do we care about kiosk mode? Well, put simply, being able to support various business scenarios that you have. Could be projects, could be interaction with the public in some scenarios. It could be, maybe a call center where there's only a need for a limited set of apps, and those machines that you're using are very fixed purpose. So whatever your business scenario might be, where you think it would be interesting to have a specific experience on a device, then kiosk mode might be for you. Protect and enable. So being able to protect the device and accordingly corporate information and your infrastructure while still enabling scenarios and usage in those scenarios that you actually need. All right. What are the scenarios we're going to talk about? Well, there's 3. We're going to talk about kiosk mode on Windows, on iOS and iPadOS, and on Android. So we will actually see how we can implement kiosk on each one of those operating systems. Okay, so at the front of the line is Windows. So first, what are the requirements for setting up kiosk mode on Windows devices? So not a lot, frankly, right? The OS is fully set and capable of delivering a kiosk mode experience. I couldn't find, maybe I missed it, but I couldn't find a specific version of Windows 10 that has to be present in order to do kiosk mode. Certainly all of the versions of Windows 10, Enterprise Education and Pro, limited there for Pro, but all of the releases of those flavors of Windows 10 that are in support now certainly have the ability to deliver a kiosk mode experience. When you think about kiosk mode, one of the things you have to consider on a Windows device is the user account, right? Well, there's multiple types of user accounts that you can configure and use in a kiosk mode scenario. You can have a local standard user, a local admin user, a domain account. You can have an Azure AD account, right? And then beyond just deciding what type of account to use, you can also decide, this is Windows, do I want this device to automatically log in instead of having to have a user supply a password? So that might be something like an ATM, something like a kiosk being used for delivering a browser experience, whatever, right? It's your choice. You can have an auto login experience. I'll show you one example where that's configured. Or you can have a scenario where you still need the user or a user to log in, right? Again, I'll show you that. Okay. So in terms of other requirements, just a couple of tables to help illustrate, well, the additional requirements, but also just to illustrate another point, right? You'll notice the title of this is Single App Mode with Universal Windows Platform Apps. Basically, single app mode with store apps, right? And then there's a number of different scenarios here: assigned access and settings, assigned access commandlets, kiosk wizard, and Windows configuration designer, right? So here's the point of this table. Kiosk mode is a scenario in Windows that you can configure and deliver through a variety of configuration options. You can use the Windows configuration designer, like it's called out. You can use PowerShell to configure this thing. And there's several options, right? The one I highlight is the option of using MDM, right? Whether it's Intune or a third party, we're focused on Intune today. But through the MDM channel, you can definitely configure kiosk mode. There are version requirements for Pro, right? And then enterprise and education versions of Windows don't have those version requirements, but we do for Pro to be able to do this. And then you'll notice for some of the other configuration methods, we don't have requirements for Pro anyway. And then specifically for the kiosk, you can have certain options for an account type. You can have a local standard user. You can have an Azure Active Directory user when you're configuring a kiosk for Windows kiosk for single app mode using store apps, right? Well, if you want to use single app mode with Windows desktop apps, Win32 apps, then again, your options are here. For MDM, same versions we can support. Again, local standard user or Azure Active Directory. And then finally, multi-app mode for Windows. With MDM, we can configure that. No specific version requirements. Here are the additions. And then again, local standard user, Azure Active Directory, right? Okay. And you'll notice that in some scenarios, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, whenever I was introducing it, some scenarios allow for an Active Directory user. Some scenarios don't, such as through the MDM configuration. Okay, so I've said configuration enough times. Let's actually go through this thing and talk about how we will go and configure kiosk mode on a Windows device, right? Well, before we actually get into the configuration, there are some things that I want to highlight in terms of recommendations for you if you're going to introduce kiosk mode configurations, right? Now, these are recommendations, and they're really put out there for you to consider these kinds of things as you're starting to prepare a kiosk experience specific to Windows devices. So one of them, and there's various ways you could introduce these settings, so I'm not going to go through the options, right? You could use MDM to deliver some of these configurations. You could use direct registry edits to introduce some of these changes, GPO, whatever. I really don't recommend GPO as your primary source anymore because moving into the modern world, using something like MDM is the way forward, but you could. So just a few, right? So you might want to hide the update notifications to this desktop. It's going to be a kiosk, and so having notifications come through that cannot be acted upon, and that really the user on that kiosk may not even be someone that's an employee of your company, probably a good idea, right? Now that's new as of Windows 10 1809, where you can hide the update notifications, but that's a recommendation. Another would be to enable and schedule automatic updates. So these are kiosk devices, but they're Windows devices, and they have updates and things that still need to be applied to them. And so being able to automate that through whatever tool you use, could be Intune, could be Config Manager if these devices are co-managed, whatever that is, but select and schedule automatic updates so that these devices, even though they are in kiosk mode, are maintained and up to date all the time. Turn off the hardware button so people can't just turn the device off, right? Again, optional, up to you. Remove the power button from the sign-in screen so it can't be turned off. Disable the camera. Also consider some changes that if things do go wrong, it won't be as obvious, right? We've all driven down the highway or been in an airport or whatever and seen a screen that is a blue screen from a device crashing or whatever. So you might want to replace the blue screen with a blank screen or some other type of thing for OS errors, so it's not just sitting there displaying a blue screen. Put the device maybe in tablet mode, hide ease of access features on the sign-in screen, turn off app notifications on the lock screen, disable removable media, right? Just some suggestions. Do you have to follow these? No. Kiosk mode will snap in either way, but these just are thoughts and topics toward helping hone that user experience exactly the way you want it to be, right? Okay, so now starting to think about kiosk mode itself. So there's two broad modes for kiosk mode on any device really, but we're talking about Windows here. First is single app kiosk mode, and the other is multi-app kiosk mode, and there's actually a third. So here, I'm going to talk about single app and multi-app. But I'm also going to show you in a moment another piece, which is called kiosk browser. I didn't know what that meant exactly whenever I first started looking at kiosk mode, and I want to call it out, right? And so I'll save the details in a minute. But really, when you think of Windows devices, 3 potential scenarios that you can use for kiosk. Okay, so for single app kiosk, and so let me say this too to avoid confusion. There really are 2 modes of operation for kiosk mode on Windows, single app, multi-app, but we do have a third, which is called kiosk browser, which you could use standalone, or you could combine with multi-app or single app. So I'm going to talk about single app and multi-app, and I'm going to show you where you access the kiosk browser pieces and kind of explain what that is. So turning our attention back, single app kiosk mode. So some of the details. Single app kiosk mode is going to allow you to run one universal Windows platform app in full screen mode on the lock screen, right? And so store app, you're going to be able to run on the device, on the lock screen, right? People using the kiosk are only ever going to see that single app. When the kiosk account signs in, the device will automatically launch that app and show that app, and the user is not going to be able to get around that app. A standard level user, an admin user could, but a standard level user, no. The kiosk account can be configured to log in automatically. Again, that's an option for single app mode. That probably makes more sense maybe than multi, but again, it's an option. If the kiosk app is closed, it automatically relaunches, right? There's some other options as well. Using shell launcher, you can configure the kiosk, which will be able to run, in that case, a Windows desktop application as the user interface instead of just a store app. So with single app mode, you can do store apps, you can do Windows Win32 apps. And then there's some other considerations as well, right? But let's talk about configuring. And so to configure this thing, I'm going to I want to talk about first, and this isn't specific to kiosk, but it kind of is, right? Kind of goes along with single app mode. How do you configure automatic logon for kiosk? Well, to answer that, let me pull in my single app mode kiosk device. All right, here it is. Okay, so this is my kiosk device, single app mode kiosk device, and you see kiosk, right? So a little bit of behind the scenes. This device is a VM, and the way I have this VM running right now is in an enhanced session. And so whenever I'm trying to demonstrate kiosk mode, I don't want to use enhanced session because it's going to put me at the screen here, where it's not going to respect the fact that I have automatic logon configured. I've put it in enhanced mode so I can actually access the desktop and show you how I have automatic logon configured. When I actually show you this working, I'm going to turn enhanced mode off, right? But I'm going to log in as my full administrator account, and we're going to get to the desktop. So yeah, that's because the other user is signed in with kiosk. So it's going to take just a second for Windows to process this, and then it will log me on in to the device as an administrator onto the desktop. And then we'll talk about setting up automatic logon. Okay, come on. Waiting for the device to respond. Shouldn't take much longer. I'm going to pause and I will come back when the desktop is up. Ah, here it comes. Now it's welcoming me in and should be up in just a second. There it is. There it comes. Come on, there it comes. Okay, good. So you see just a standard Windows desktop. Again, this is the kiosk, but it's not in kiosk mode because I'm logged in as a full administrator and I'm using the enhanced mode. So to show you how to configure automatic logon, I'm just going to pop into the, and there's multiple ways, frankly, that you can do this. There's a tool, forget the name of it now. Oh, yeah, of course. There's a tool from sysinternals called auto logon, and it's a nice UI that will configure auto logon. And what it does is it actually stamps the configurations into the registry, as you will see here. So whether you want to edit the registry directly or whether you want to use that tool, either way. So to get to the settings, local machine, and then software, and then Microsoft, and then Windows. All right, and then Windows, oops, sorry, I did that wrong, not Windows, Windows NT, which that's an old operating system we don't think of anymore, but it was there for a while, and that registry key is still there. So current version, I'm going to expand this, current version, and then WinLogon. WinLogon, right here, right? And so there are 4 entries that we care about. First is auto admin logon, must be set to 1. And then the default username right here. So this is the default username that I've configured. And then the default password, default password, I don't see that, but I know it's there. Where is it? Oh, you know, sorry, it's not. This doesn't have a password for this particular one. That's right. And then the default domain name here, this is a local account, so there is no default domain name, but it's all here, right? And so in the registry, you can configure automatic logon. And not to jump ahead, but I'm going to just shift this out of enhanced session. Actually, let me sign off of it. Sign out. I have some updates apparently, which I will put on later. So I'm going to sign out. And then I'm back at the main screen. In fact, let me, I'm just going to reboot this thing. Actually, I'm going to turn it off, and then we'll start it up together in a minute. So that will come back to, notice the name is 11F. I'm going to shut it down, and we will come back and see the full kiosk experience in a little bit whenever I power that thing back on. All right, so how do I go and configure this thing? Well, let me pop in the Intune console, if you will, to the system and show you. So here's the Intune console, the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center Intune console. And I'm going to navigate to Devices, and then Windows, and then Configuration Profiles. And so you're going to see 3 things here, related to kiosk anyway, once it loads. Here I have kiosk for single app, kiosk for multi-app, and kiosk browser. So I'm actually going to start with kiosk browser when I show you the settings, but let me show you how you even get into it. So if I want to go create a kiosk mode configuration, then I'm just going to click New Profile, and I'm going to select Windows 10. And then I need to choose either Settings Catalog or Template, right? Well, let's just choose Template real quick and see what our options are. As I scroll down, I'm looking for kiosk, and in fact, I find it. So here's kiosk, and I can select this, create, and then you'll see that my options are what you kind of would expect. Well, once I put this this name in here and click next, my options are what you would expect. Select the kiosk mode. Is it going to be single app, which is full screen kiosk, or multi-app? And then I go from there, right? So that's one pathway. But then if I go to the other and Here, let's do that again. Windows and configuration profiles and create. If I go the other pathway and I use the settings catalog and click create and give a name, then I'm going to have the ability or be asked to add settings from the settings catalog. And I'm going to naturally look for kiosk. I'm just going to scroll down looking for anything related to kiosk. And hey, as kind of expected, I found it. But notice here it says kiosk browser. With templates, it says kiosk. What's the difference, right? So if I click kiosk browser and I then scroll down, you're going to see that the settings that are displayed as a result, they are not the same, right? They are not the same. So why did I show you this? I show you this for two reasons, because there is an option to do this thing called kiosk browser. I'm going to start and show you that first. But then also, sometimes you get asked, or I get asked the question, hey, is the settings catalog and the templates option, are they at parity? And the answer is most of the time, yes, not all the time, right? And settings catalog is still in preview status. And so if you really want to make sure you're finding all of the options for a given scenario, take a look at both. It's a good idea while both are there to just know what the options are. So if you really, really want to configure kiosk mode, single or multi-app, you're not going to do it through the settings catalog. You're going to do it through templates. If you want to configure kiosk browser, and that's all you want to configure, then you're going to do it through settings catalog, right? And again, just to be specific and not to get lost in this, you can configure kiosk browser directly, or you can configure kiosk browser as part of single app kiosk mode or as part of multi-app kiosk mode, right? So let me show you this first one where I've actually configured kiosk browser. So in this case, this is going to introduce, I didn't know what kiosk browser was at the beginning. I thought, well, what is that? Maybe I should have. But what kiosk browser is an app that's in the Microsoft Store that you can download and you can install. And basically, this is a very focused browser, a browser intended to have specific function that basically helps you have the user directed onto the website, not necessarily directed onto trying to browse around to other places, or maybe you find different things in a familiar browser like Edge or Chrome or something like that, right? So in this example, I'm just taking kiosk browser and I'm deploying that to a Windows 10 device. It's a full Windows 10 PC, so I could use Edge, I could use whatever. So my intention is just to show you kiosk browser, and probably you will use kiosk browser more in conjunction with a single app mode kiosk or a multi-app mode kiosk. But again, you don't have to, but you can, and probably would. And so here it is, right? And in terms of it's definitely successfully deployed to my one device. And so in terms of, scroll down. In terms of settings here for this, if I look at the configuration settings for my kiosk browser, basically I'm saying the blocked URL exceptions, meaning the places I can go to, would be Bing, right? And so you can look and see what you could do. You see list of exceptions, right? And so you can add more than one. I just chose here. And then the blocked URL, list of, so you could add more than one here if you wanted to. And so these are websites that the user cannot navigate to. And then here's the default URL. So when this app launches, the kiosk browser, it's going to launch in Bing, right? And then here's some shaping of the browser experience. Whether I want to enable the in session button, the home button, right? So I'm allowing the home button, but I'm not allowing the navigation buttons at all. And then here is how long I will wait on an idle browser before I just restart the session, right? So for example, if you have the kiosk browser delivering an experience to a user, and that user walks away. This is how long I'm going to wait before recycling the browser back to my home page. And so this could be anywhere from 0 to 1440. Where is it? 0 to 1440. It says that somewhere for the restart time. But anyway, definitely can be longer than 1 minute. Maybe I'm thinking of something else for 1440, but definitely configurable, and you can choose. So I have this deployed and working, right? So as I do each one of these, I'm actually going to show you the result in my virtual machines. Instead of saving that, I'm just going to combine all of that together. So let me grab my virtual machine that is delivering the kiosk browser experience. And here it is. Okay, so here's this virtual machine. So it is a full PC, no issue. It's full desktop. I'm just using Kiosk browser, right? I could launch Edge here, no issue. It would give me the experience that I want. Well, come on, Edge launch. So it would give me the experience. I could do whatever I want to do, but I want to show you the configurations of Kiosk browser. So here's Kiosk browser that I've deployed to this device with Intune, and now I'm putting and overlaying configurations on top of it. So Kiosk browser is going to launch, and it's going to go to Bing right away, right? And I can resize this thing, no problem, right? And some of the things that I've allowed, like here's the home button. I've allowed the home button, but certain other things aren't necessarily here. I can end the session here if I want to, no problem. And that'll close, and then I'd have to reopen it. But you see that it immediately went to Bing. And so if I try to go to Google, and if I can type, it's going to tell me, sorry, nope, you can't do that. That URL is blocked. And I'm just going to let this sit for a little bit, and I'm going to do it real time so that there's a counter that's kind of counting down in the background. And what I'm wanting to show you is the experience when that timer starts to get toward the end. We're going to first see our notification at 30 seconds left about the browser's going to be about to reset in just a moment, right? So we'll just kick along here and wait and see if we get that pop-up here in just a moment. And I think I was mixing that 1440 with single app mode, but we'll see that in a minute. And I hope that I'm not mixing the pop-up with single app mode. We'll see in just a minute whether this thing recycles or not. So I'm not pausing this. I just want you to see the whole experience and what happens at the end of a minute. There we go. Do you need more time? So in 30 seconds, it's going to recycle and back to Bing as our default home screen, or the default URL that the browser opens in. And then you'll see a similar type of experience in true single app mode, kiosk mode, in a moment as well. So let's just give it 5 more seconds, and it will recycle, and we will be done with this particular one, right? Okay, so recycling, back to Bing, and that's the experience, right? So I can close this again. Nothing's preventing me from getting to the actual desktop because I haven't actually prevented anything there. Okay, so that's Kiosk browser, and you will see Kiosk browser in a couple more times because you could choose to use that as your single app in your single app kiosk mode. I didn't, but you could, and you could choose to use it as multi-app, right? Okay, so let me show you now the settings for single app mode kiosk. So if I go back to Windows and look at our configuration profiles, then we will see single app mode. So let's go there and look at properties, and we will look at our settings. Now, I should say, well, I'll actually save that. Okay, so configuration here. So you will see that I have my kiosk mode set to single app full screen, and I am going to auto log on, and then the application type is just going to be Edge browser. Right now I have others, I could use legacy browser. I could add the kiosk browser, right? Or it could be a store app right here. And so I'm good with that. So if I wanted to do kiosk browser, notice how the settings shift. And then if I want to go back to Edge browser, you see how the settings shift. In fact, I think I just lost my configuration. So let me exit out of this and then go back in. So single app mode, let's go back into that. Go to properties and then back into configuration settings, edit. Okay, so it's going to auto log in. It's going to use the Edge browser. The URL that I'm going to is simply my blog, and that's it. It's not going to be able to exit out of Edge. I am allowing public browsing in private, right? I could go to other websites. Now, in my case, I could go to other websites here. You could set up restrictions for Edge, for kiosk browser, whatever, to only go to specific websites and not allow other things, right? You could. With kiosk browser, I already showed you how you could do that, right? You could specify restricted websites. You could specify included websites, whatever. And then my refresh time is 1 minute, and I can do anything from 0 to 1440. And then if I want to do maintenance on this kiosk, here's where I can configure the maintenance time, which I don't actually have configured. So I've deployed this to one test device. I already showed you that test device a moment ago when I was showing you auto log on. So we're going to go back to that test device in just a second. But you will see here that it's deployed here, right? If I look at per setting status, you'll see that it actually is out there and everything's been successful. So this is one way you can look at the deployment success and such right here. So let's actually go get that device again. Let me go see if I can find it here, right? So I turned it off. So I'm going to start it here, and I'm going to avoid getting into enhanced mode. Make sure startup. I should get a prompt here to connect to the device, and I'm going to cancel it out. So connecting. Come on. A booted VM never boots. Oh, it's working on updates. That's interesting. Okay, so that's probably my fault. I'm going to pause it, and then we'll start this again as soon as the updates apply. Okay, so the updates have applied. That was my fault, because I did see that it was pending, so I should have just gone ahead and installed it. Either way. So now they've applied. Now I'm going to start it up again, and let's see what the experience is like. I'm going to specifically on this VM, if you have a physical device, it doesn't matter, but on this VM, I'm going to specifically avoid entering enhanced mode, I hope, right? I should get a prompt here in just a moment about it. And actually, let me shift out of it. So I didn't, but I'm shifting out of it. So I'm not in enhanced mode. You see kiosk is automatically working on logging in. Now let me go ahead and blow it up. And so I've automatically logged in, and I should get a browser that pops up and goes to my blog in just a moment. All right. Saw some signs of life there. Might be a little bit slow because of the update. Okay, so I got a browser. It went to my blog, and I'm good, right? So I went to my blog, and I can also go to Bing, maybe. Let's see what it does. Takes me to Bing, no problem. So the default web page is my blog. Now I went to Bing. I could browse around, and then I'm going to just keep my hands off the keyboard, and we're waiting for that 1 minute recycle time where it's going to take me back to my blog as the default page, right? And then we'll poke around a little bit more, and then we're done, right, with this. But this, you see how single app kiosk mode works. It just, in my case, automatically logged on based on the settings that I have, automatically launched Edge, automatically took me to my configured web page, and that's it. And you'll see in just a minute, whenever I exit Edge, it's not going to let me do that. It's going to immediately launch it again. And I'm configured to work in private because I'm not going to move the cursor. But on the right-hand side, you can see that my browser is browsing in private because that's the option I chose. And now it's going to tell me, hey, in just a little bit, we're going to end the session and take you back to the default web page. So we'll just let that happen. And then we'll do one more thing and we'll be done. It's amazing how long a minute takes whenever you're actually waiting for the counter to count down for that full minute. So in just a few seconds now, we should have the browser reset and recycle. There we go, back to my home page, right? And there we are, right? So I'm a user. Hey, I'm going to fake out the system. I'm going to close the browser. Yeah, well, you do, but then it comes right back, right? Because that's the only app that's allowed to run. Now, I mentioned that, pardon me, that if I shift into enhanced mode, you've already seen this, but just for continuity, if I shift into enhanced mode, or that's on the VM case, if you're doing it on a PC, this is the kiosk account, but I can log in with a full admin account, no problem, and it gets to the desktop. Have to wait for this, which I'm not going to, but that's single app kiosk mode, right? Pretty interesting stuff. Okay, now what about multi-app kiosk? Well, let's go take a look at that, right? So back to Windows, okay? We have multi-app. And so multi-app is just a different selection on the drop-down. So if I go to Properties, we'll see Configuration Settings. Now, a word about multi-app, right? Multi-app is definitely something you can configure. But when you're specifying multi-app, you are basically saying these are the apps that are allowed to run on this device, right? And that seems very straightforward, and conceptually it is, especially for the ones that I've got in my demo, right? For some apps that you might want to run, there are requirements for those apps to be able to access other components of the system, right? So in order for your one app to run, you would need to make sure that all of the other apps that your one app depends on are also able to run. What that means is that the configuration of multi-app kiosk mode sometimes can get a little bit dicey because of all of these dependencies. And you can certainly navigate those dependencies, yes. But there probably is a better way to do this that I'm not talking about today, but I will do in an upcoming session called Shared PC, right? So we'll talk about Shared PC. I'll show you multi-app kiosk here, but then I want to talk to you about Shared PC in another session. So bear that in mind. If this kind of multi-app experience is interesting to you, look for the session on Shared PC, and you'll see some details there. So you see that I've got multi-app kiosk mode configured. I'm not allowing Windows S devices. I'm using local user account, so it could be any of these options, right? I'm actually going to require a logon with a local user account. These are the local user accounts that I will be looking for. So Steve and Steve Standard, right? And that's it. And then here are the various applications that I could add. So I could add Edge. Now be aware that's legacy Edge. I could also add my kiosk browser here, a store app, a Win32 app, or I could search for the app I want using this ID. So I've just got a couple of Win32 apps specified, medium icons. And so it says configured. When it says configured, the way you configure these is to give it a name, a path to the application. This is Win32. And then the actual ID for that app. And here again, you can specify the tile size. So the question is, how do you get the ID for this app? Well, so this is Notepad. Another one is Rich Copy. Let me show you real quick. I'm just going to pop this open on my corporate device real quick. So I'm just going to launch PowerShell, right? And so to get your details about your apps that you might want to put in there, get Start Apps, and you'll list out all the apps and then the particular information you need to have about that is over here. So you could even get more fancy and put some things like -name in there and the name of the app you care about to get that detail. But that's how you know what to put in there for the AUMID, okay? And then there's other options down here, such as use alternate layout. I'm not, whether I'm going to show or hide the taskbar or allow access to downloads, and then some maintenance stuff if I choose to do so. So let's pull in the device. Oh, before I do that, here, let me show you. Oops. So I want to show you this. I didn't really intend to do this, but it happened, so I thought I would keep it around just to show it to you. So if I go to my per settings, right, this is a really good place to kind of get an understanding of what the experience is across the devices you've targeted. I've targeted 2 devices with this configuration. The first one didn't go so well for a few of these settings. I'm not sure why, probably because it's just a device I've demoed and reset many, many times and it's gotten confused. But so you can see I've targeted 2 devices. On 2 devices, all of these settings have gone in correctly. On one device, kiosk and assigned access configuration and so on have gone in correctly, but on one device, they failed. And so this is kind of the way it looks, kind of giving you, if you've targeted 10 devices, you're going to see 10 results in here sprinkled across the way things have worked. Hopefully, all 10 in all cases will be successful, but you get the idea, right? So let me pull in the device that is configured for multi-app kiosk mode. And so I'm going to say, okay, so I'm at my corporate, I'm at my desktop right now, and I am logged in as an administrator on this device. No. I'm logged in as an administrator on this device, and I know that because if I do who am I will be Steve. So Steve is the administrator. So I'm logging out, and this is also not an enhanced mode session. So I'm going to log out of this PC and then log in with the kiosk mode account, the non-admin account. Okay. So here is the other user option. I'm going to say Steve Standard and log in. And this, okay, let's make sure that I typed it right. This will be a multi-app kiosk experience. Really? Oh, yeah, sorry. I'd forgotten. This one is Azure AD join, so I need to specify it is a local account. Now let's try it. This should be better. Okay, cool. And so this will launch in the multi-app kiosk configuration, which is going to allow me access to 2 apps and a specific desktop associated with multi-app kiosk mode. So as soon as we get logged in here, there we are, right? So we are in multi-app kiosk mode. I can do certain things, certain other things I can't. So you can see these options that are available. I can see on the Windows Start menu, just, this is the Windows Start menu. Up here, I can kind of see a few things. Here I have some options to, oops, I didn't mean to click that. I clicked the rich copy, which I didn't realize until later is actually the installer, which I didn't mean for it to be, but that's okay. It shows you that it ran Notepad will run. Here comes Notepad. Right, close that out, back to the desktop, no issue. And so I can have access to the power. I have access to my account here where I can do things like sign out or switch user or whatever, right? But that's it, right? That's it. This is the way that multi-app kiosk works with Windows 10. Gives you just a kind of an eyeball of it. You can arrange the icons, whatever size you want, different things, right? That's multi-app kiosk in Windows. Now, let me get this out of the way for a minute. So I did configuring and I did in action. I showed you each of the examples as I went through. There are some interesting places where you can kind of help yourself in case things don't go right exactly in the configuration of this. And so for the Windows side, let's take a look at some of the troubleshooting options that are available. And to show you the troubleshooting options, I'm going to pull back in my multi-app kiosk device. I thought I was. I accidentally actually closed it. So let me go open it again. There. Okay. So cool. I'm going to connect to it. And then we'll show you a couple of configuration options. So I showed you in Intune the options for looking at the configuration profile. So I'm going to log in as the administrator. Oops, I have to do the local account designation. And so I showed you in Intune where you can look at the results of your configuration just within Intune, looking at the per settings status, and you could also look at device status if you wanted to. In Windows, you can look at the event log as soon as it catches up with me. There we go, event viewer. And so if I go into the event viewer and I navigate to applications and services log, take a second for that to open up, and then we'll go to Microsoft and then Windows. As soon as it opens, come on. Anytime now. There we go. Then we'll go to Microsoft and then Windows, and then two places. We'll go first to App Locker right here. And then we can see detail about the different kinds of things that App Locker might be dealing with in terms of XEs and DLLs and MSIs and scripts and different things, right? So this would just help us get an idea what's going on the device. And then another section is I can navigate down to device management. Let me just go down to device management. Device management. Device management here, right? And then there's two options. Come on. There's two options. There's admin, which will show you some detail about what's going on. And there's operational, which is helpful, but it is disabled by default. You would need to enable it from this menu. I could disable it here, but you would enable it because it's disabled by default. And you would see different events related to things in the operational log. I'm not going to dig through these event logs, but just wanted to point out that they are here. And then another little interesting thing. So I mentioned that kiosk mode in Windows is based on app locker, assigned access, whatever, right? And with those, you generally think of an XML blob that gets put on the system to define what these are. And that may be true. I haven't been able to find it, but what I did find, and I think might be unique to MDM, is that the settings for app locker, for kiosk mode, get put in the registry at this location, right? So local machine software, Microsoft, Windows, assigned access, the profile GUID, and then the configuration. So let me show you over here. So here under Windows, we have assigned access configuration, profiles, the profile GUID, and all the settings associated with it, and then apps that are allowed to run. So app 0, app 1, some configuration. So that's a good place to go to confirm whether your settings have been delivered to the device and what your whether you're expecting this thing to work or to not work or to whatever, right? Okay, so in terms of tips and tricks, don't really have anything that I haven't talked about already. Just to reiterate some, multi-app kiosk mode can be challenging sometimes in Windows. So shared PC is one that might be of interest to you and might be preferred for you. So just stay tuned for a session that I'm going to do on shared PC, right? And that's Windows. So moving on to iOS and iPad OS. So let's do the same kind of thing. Let's first talk about the requirements. And as far as requirements, again, I didn't notice a ton. I mean, certainly you need to have your device in supervised mode, right? Well, supervised mode with an Apple device, typically you might think of supervised mode being that mode that you get into whenever you enroll your device through something like Apple DEP, Apple ADE, same thing, just different names these days, right? And that's true. If you enroll your device through Apple DEP, Apple ADE, Apple, the school equivalent, whatever, then the device will be supervised. That's not the only way, though. If you have a device and you don't necessarily have access to ADE or ABM or whatever the acronym is these days, right? For work or school, there's different flavors for each. Then you can take your device and hook it up to Apple Configurator and use Apple Configurator to set it in supervised mode, and then reset. It will require a reset of the device. And then when you enroll that device, it will come in supervised. That's the way I did the devices in this demo, right? And that's great for a lab. Not so great if you're trying to do things in a production setting, but anyway, right? So supervised mode. For single app mode, I couldn't find any specific OS level called out. Certainly for any of the supported versions of iOS right now, we can do single app mode, we can do multi-app mode, no problem, right? There are certain configurations that you'll see in the UI that require iOS 13 or better, right? Just as anything, right? Any vendor progresses their OS, there's certain features that will be added that will require that version of the OS to be able to implement, and that's the case here. For multi-app mode, you need iOS 9.3 or newer. That shouldn't be a big deal because most everyone should be well past that now, right? Or iPad OS 13 or newer for multi-app. And just to call out, there is a configuration option in the UI that says kiosk for iOS. And that is for single app mode. There is no configuration that says multi-app mode kiosk, right? You do that a different way. So let me go into how you actually go configure this thing. And so for iOS, and we'll do the same thing as before, I'll show you how to configure it in Intune, the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center, Intune console. And then I'll show it to you live on the device. So I'm going to go back to devices and then go to iOS, iPad OS, and we will go to configuration profiles. And so here you see I have one for single app mode, one for multi-app mode. Let me just go create the profile right first and just show it to you. So if I go create a profile for iOS kiosk mode, then the first thing I'm going to do is choose the device restrictions category. So device restrictions category. Okay, so kiosk mode for a single app kiosk is underneath device restrictions. So I'm just going to give a name and scroll on down and click next. And so in the device restrictions, you'll see that I have kiosk mode right here. And this allows me to configure single app kiosk, right, with a bunch of different settings. So if I just look at the apps that I can run in kiosk mode, so this assumes single app kiosk, right? And so I mentioned also that you can do multi-app, but there's not a specific category for kiosk for iOS to do that. And so to do that, you need to use show or hide apps right here. So this is where you will see me configure what I'm going to do with multi-app, right? So I'm going to exit out of here, and I will show you the two that I actually have configured. We'll start with single app mode. So here's single app mode, and you can see that I have it deployed successfully. So I'll do a per setting status here real quick. So I've got two positive indicators that it's been successfully deployed. Let's go look at properties. I'm going to edit my configuration settings, and we'll scroll down to kiosk. All right, and so here's what I have configured. Basically, I'm going to use a built-in app. I'm going to use Safari and only let Safari run. I've just got some different things that I've configured on it to show, right? Different settings that you can configure. And so now what I want to do is show you what this looks like. And so as I get ready to demonstrate this, just a reminder that I'm going to be demonstrating this with my phone camera, trying to record the screen of an iPad, right? In this case, an iPad, and then next an iPhone. So it might be a little bit shaky, but bear with me, and we'll get it done. So let me just get everything arranged, and I'll pick the video back up. Okay, so through the magic of screen mirroring technology, I'm just going to pull in my iPhone. So that is my iPhone that I'm looking at through the camera. And so I just want to show you at the start screen. So let me back up a little bit so maybe you can see it all. I'm going to press, I think, the start button or the home screen. And I'm going to take this away as I put in my, my password. All right. And then I launch this, and I'm in low battery mode. Yeah, I don't care. Right. And it's really not that exciting of a demo because all it does is launch the browser. Right. But I'm locked into that browser. I can press home. I can try to do whatever, but it's not going anywhere. It is completely locked into the browser that I've approved in single app kiosk mode. So I'm going to, and I can do this and play with it and whatever, but it's going to stay locked into that browser. So I'm going to take the single app kiosk mode out of the way. I'm going to move my screen mirroring software, and then let's look at the example for multi-app kiosk. So get out of here and get out of here, and then we'll go back to multi-app kiosk. And so this is where I've configured through what I'm going to allow to be seen, right? If I look at per settings, it's definitely deployed. So if I go look at how I have this configured, looking at my configuration settings, now I'm not looking at kiosk mode. Now I'm looking at show or hide apps. And so here, all I'm going to do is basically, I'm defining visible apps. I could define hidden, but I'm going to define what apps are visible. And you see here that I'm allowing Safari, Calculator, Speed Test, and Camera, right? And so here, if I pull in my multi-app kiosk, this is an iPhone, then you'll see. So let me get the screen sharing software ready again, and we'll do that. Okay, so let me drag that over to the main screen. There we go. This time it's an iPhone, and so I'm going to log in to the iPhone with my PIN. So bear with me one moment while I put in my PIN. All right, and here it is. Here's the iPhone. Set up later in settings, don't care. So here's the iPhone, and there are some things that you can't hide, some things that you can. There's some documentation detail on that, but you see the very focused experience that I can get by using the show or hide apps option for iOS, right? Okay, so let me get rid of this over to my other screen. And really, that is Apple. Pretty straightforward, pretty streamlined as to how you do that with iOS. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of that, and we'll get out of that too. Then we will minimize this and come back to the PowerPoint. So I showed you configuring. I showed you in action. Just some troubleshooting tips. You know, if the first place to always start is in the section where we know whether the profile has deployed or not. There are some additional levels of troubleshooting we can go to if we need to. I'm not going to go into those. Largely right now, there's logging you can get through Configurator and different things on the Apple device that are not as straightforward to demonstrate. So I'll just mention them here. But a good place to start is in the status, the per setting status, the device status as devices are deployed. And so that leaves us with Android. So in terms of requirements for Android, you do need Android 6.0 or better. You really probably can't find a device that doesn't have at least Android 6.0, at least being sold today, probably beyond Android 6.0. The device needs to be enrolled as either Android Enterprise Dedicated or Android Enterprise Fully Managed. I'm going to talk about dedicated, right? There is an option for fully managed, but I'm going to talk about dedicated. I have two Android devices I'll show you, and so didn't set up the fully managed option. I'll mention it. But the other thing is the managed home screen app. Now, this is not required for the single app kiosk configuration on the Android device. It is required for multi-app. As I mentioned, there is no specific setting in the list of options for kiosk, right? It is under device restrictions, and it is under a category called device experience. And the way multi-app is implemented is by using the managed home screen app. So for that specific scenario, that is a requirement on the Android Enterprise dedicated devices. I'll show it to you, right? Suffice it to say that the configuration options, when you get to that, assume that you have the managed home screen app deployed. If you don't, like I say, key component, you've got to have that in order to implement kiosk mode for Android devices. Okay, so let's talk about configuring. So when we're configuring for Android kiosk, right? So specifically in single app mode, when we do this configuration, that's where we're going to start a single app mode, then this process is going to configure your Android device to run only one single app, thus the name single app mode, and it must be a Google Play Store app. So this, again, like any kiosk, is ideal for scenarios where you're collecting customer data and doing things of that nature, cash register, whatever. And so if we want to configure this thing, then we're going to go into the Endpoint Manager Admin Center, Intune console, and access the configuration profile accordingly under device restrictions. So grabbing the console or the website and pulling it in. All right, let's navigate to devices and Android, and configuration profiles. Now, as we look at this, right, so I've already mentioned there's no specific setting for kiosk mode in Android. It will be, all these settings will be under device, well, I say all these settings, the kiosk specific settings will be under device experience. Now, there are some other places that you might find settings that would be interesting to you for kiosk mode. Largely, they will be under device restrictions. There will be things like a power button menu or system error warnings or enabled system navigation features and different things that you will not find under device experience, but you can find under device restrictions. So if I'm going to set up an Android profile, first I'll select the platform, which will be not Android Device Administrator. That's deprecated. There are some kiosk settings here. I'm not talking about Android Device Administrator at all because Google has deprecated that. So we're going to go under Android Enterprise. And then specifically on this section, we're looking for the dedicated category, which is here, and then device restrictions and create, right? And so I'll give it a name, whatever, and then move forward in the wizard. And this is how I get to, pardon me, the device experience portion where I can configure kiosk mode. Now, notice the enrollment profile type. If I do fully managed, I don't have anything under here for kiosk mode. I only have options for Microsoft Launcher. So I mentioned to you before that if you are on a fully managed device, there is a way to configure a kiosk type experience, and that is through using Microsoft Launcher. I'm not demonstrating that here. I'm going to demonstrate on the dedicated device And this is where you can configure single app or multi-app kiosk mode. Now, I mentioned that there's nothing in a profile that will specifically refer to kiosk. That is true, right? The device experience is where you find the kiosk settings. And then when you set to dedicated, that's where you will actually see in the UI some settings for kiosk specifically, okay? So now let me take you through what I've configured, and then we'll look at a device or two. So let's start with single app. So if I go to single app, first of all, I know that the device has received these settings. Everything is okay. There's a couple that are a little bit odd, but largely things are okay, right? And they're working, so I don't care a lot about some of these, but still, some of them are not applicable, right? And I don't see any errors, just to call that out, as I go back and forth. It's just certain settings aren't applicable for my condition, which is fine, right? And then I want to look at properties for this. And so if I look at properties and look at my configuration, then specifically under device experience, what I have is that this is set up for a dedicated device under single app, and I am going to allow Chrome, and that's it, right? I can add others if I wanted to, and they would need to be apps that are in the App Store, the Google Play Store. So I'm going to use Chrome for this. I have deployed it. It's out there. And so now what I need to do is get the screen sharing software ready, and then I will show you the Android device so configured. So stand by. I'm going to get everything ready, and I will come back. All right, so I'm going to grab the screen sharing software, pull it over to the screen. All right, so now I'm going to be using my camera to show you on an Android device. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to power up the device. On the home screen, you will see there is the home screen of this Android app. I'm going to open it, and immediately all that launches is Chrome, right? Chrome, and that's it. Now, I don't even know, yeah, there comes internet connectivity. I could browse with this, whatever, and then if I want to try to do anything else, I can't. There's nothing else I can do. If I delete the tab, if I don't fat finger it, come on, quit it. Okay, let me try the other hand. Okay, if I delete the tabs, then cool, Google just launches right back, right? I'm forced to be in Google. So this is the single app mode experience on an Android an Android dedicated device type. All right, so now let's go talk about and look at what it means to configure multi-app kiosk. So for that one, I'm going to close this and close this, and then go back to my multi-app configuration. Now, before I get here, well, okay, let me just show you, right? So I'm going to go in here, and you can in fact see that this is deployed successfully, no problem. There's one not applicable, but the rest of them are good to go, right? So deployed successfully. And so if I go into and look at this in properties and look at the way this is configured, okay? So configuration settings, edit, and device experience. So here I am, and please, again, just a reminder, I'm showing you under device experience. There are other settings around under device restrictions that are maybe interesting to you for a kiosk device. So take a look at those. I'm not showing them here. I'm focused in on enabling kiosk, but there are some there. So I'm on a dedicated device, and then there's multi-app that I've got configured. Right? And so what I've got configured, I mentioned before that when you set a multi-app kiosk configuration on an Android device, that is a dedicated device enrolled in Android Enterprise dedicated. There's an assumption that the configuration makes, right? And that assumption is that you are using the managed home screen app on that Android device, which will be leveraged to facilitate kiosk mode. Another way of saying that If you don't have managed home screen app on that device, your configuration for multi-app kiosk is going to fail because the multi-app kiosk configuration requires the managed home screen app. So you see that I'm configuring certain apps that are going to be allowed on this device. So I'm letting package name viewer be there, Microsoft Edge web browser, Google Chrome, Android settings app, right? And this one's interesting, just a note. I included that just to have one to include, but this one's interesting. There's certain detail that you'll need to be able to supply, like for an Android settings app, right? I can remove that, but I don't want to. If I want to add a device, or sorry, an app, there's certain things that you might want to add. These are ones from the store, whatever else. But if you want to add maybe an app like this, there's certain details you'll need, like the package name, right? And the package name you can discover using a tool like Package Name Viewer 2.0, right? So I just added that accordingly. And then you don't see anywhere in here where managed home screen is allowed, right? Because it's assumed to be there and required. And it is deployed to the Android device from Intune. I'll show you that in just a second. But a lot of the settings down here are specifically for the managed home screen app, like folder icon, or app and folder size, or app notification badges, or things like that, right? The ability to leave kiosk mode, which I've said yes, and given a pin of 1, 2, 3, 4, which I'll show you in a minute. So there is the possibility that some of the settings that you might want will be visible here in the device configuration, and then they will also be visible over in the app configuration policy section, which I'll show you in just a minute. So all you need is the managed home screen app deployed and on the Android device, and then if you just stay here and only configure the settings that are here, that's fine. That's what I've done. The only settings deployed to my Android device are the managed home screen app and this device configuration profile. I do have an app configuration policy set up, but it's not assigned anywhere. I just have it set up to be able to show it to you. And so the app configuration policy has additional settings that you might want to place onto the kiosk Android device, optionally. Sometimes, in some cases, you will see a setting that's visible and configurable both in the device configuration profile and the app configuration policy. If that's the case, always prefer the device configuration profile for that setting. Don't set it in both places. Use the device configuration profile. So you see what I've got configured here, right? And so you see this is deployed and out there and different things, right? So a number of settings here. Now, I mentioned that you need the managed home screen app deployed. So let me go show you that. So if I go back to the portal main menu and then go under apps and then focus on Android, then I'm going to see the managed home screen. And this is assigned and we're good, right? So this is from managed Google Play Store. So you have to acquire that and then deploy it down to your device, assign it to your device. That's done. I'm good. Another step, again, optional, is that you can use the app configuration policy. And I hope I'm saying that right. Policy is sticking in my brain. Let's see if I'm right. And I'm going to go down to the app configuration policies. Yay, I'm right. And I'm going to look, right? And I have a managed home screen. This is not assigned, right? I just built it to be able to show it to you. And so these app configuration policies, if you want to know more about these, by the way, I did a whole series on apps and how to assign those and work with those. And part of that was the app configuration policies. And then there's the app protection policies. Back when I did the recording, it was called MAM for app protection policies. Anyway, not to get sidetracked there, but if you want to understand those more, take a look at those video series or videos in that series. So these app configuration policies help augment configurations in the app. Not all apps are built to facilitate this. Some are. Managed home screen certainly is. One thing to note that I'll call out here. App configuration policies are applied to an app roughly every 30 minutes. Quicker at beginning, but if the app's there every 30 minutes-ish, it will go out and check for any updates to configuration. So if you go change something in here after the app's deployed and the initial configuration policy applied, it's not going to take effect immediately. Just be aware of that. Again, more detail in the video I did on app configuration policies if you care. All right, but let's go look at this. So on this app config policy, and of course, probably goes without saying, in order for the app config policy to work, the app it's going to configure has to be installed on the device. So in this case, managed home screen has to be installed on the device before this. So if I want to go look at properties of this, right? Oops, sorry, I already clicked that. And I want to go look at the settings. I'm going to edit that. I have two big categories I can configure. First is permissions. So I don't have any permissions granted, but if I wanted to add additional permissions that would then override the default permissions, I can set them here, right? So a lot of different options that you can set here. So that's one section to take a look at. I'm not going to go through each one. I'll leave that to you. And then in terms of specific configuration settings, you can either upload using a JSON. That requires a bit more knowledge about building a JSON in the right format, whatever. Or you can use the UI configuration designer, which I like. And so here's a whole bunch of settings that you can configure true or false, sizes, whatever, descriptions. So I just pulled a few. But then if you click add, you will see a tremendous number of additional settings that you can put in place. And so again, I'm not going to go through each one of these. You can take a look at this yourself, but just know that these options are here for you to configure. And that's really it, right? As far as the app configuration policies as to what you can put out there. Now, so I've got this deployed. So the managed home screen app is on the Android device. The device configuration profile has been applied to this device. The app configuration policy that you're seeing here has not been. I did not assign it, right? So all you're going to see is the combination of managed home screen and the device configuration profile. So I'm going to go get the screen sharing software ready. We'll take a look at it, and I will be right back when I'm ready. Okay, so here I am focused on this Android enterprise device with the configuration. So I'm going to go ahead and power it on. You see that I need to get this thing charging. So I'm going to go ahead and do this forward, right? So actually, I didn't reset it from before. So here's the main home screen, but this is what will happen. Like you just saw, you might get a glimpse of that default home screen, but very quickly it will be replaced by the managed home screen app. And so it has just a few items that I've allowed to show up. So you see the settings app, you see this package manager app, and these will launch, right? So I will go ahead and launch that. Well, come on, go back. Let you see the whole thing. So that's bizarre. Here, let me click on start. Okay, fine. I don't know. Did I fat finger something? There. That's what I want. So I can actually, that's not the package manager. That's just Wi-Fi. So I've allowed configuring Wi-Fi, and it goes back to the default home screen in this device for just a moment, interestingly. Come on. All right, cool. Then it goes back. And then here's the package manager right there. So I'm going to click back. All right, and then it reset pretty quickly. And here's my settings app, right? And then it goes pretty quickly. So you get a glimpse of the default home screen. Don't know what it's like on other devices, but at least in this one case. Now, one thing I want to show you. So there is some uniqueness about the managed home screen app, because if you want to get to, if you're an admin and you want to be able to get onto the main home screen, the default home screen of the device, If you allow it in your configuration, you can just press this back button a bunch of times, and then you'll get a menu that allows you to leave. You can enter the PIN, and so I'm going to type in 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I think I am 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, hang on. I'm fat fingering it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. And so I don't know, probably the interface with my fat finger is going too quickly, but you saw it. Exit out. And then another thing you can do here, which is very useful for troubleshooting, I'm going to hit this back button again a bunch of times. And then another thing you can do is go look at logs. And so if you're having trouble on your device, then you do have full access to look at logs, and could be interesting for you. So I'm going to then exit out because we're done with the demo there, and I want to. We're starting to edge toward the exit now. So let me minimize this and get back to the PowerPoint for a second. Okay, so that was configuring. I also showed it to you working. One thing I wanted to put in for you, I'm not going to go through it in detail, but you can see it, just kind of a chart of what you can do with a single app kiosk, what you can do with a multi-app kiosk. This is from our documentation, but here for you in case you want to take a look at it. And here was in action, right? And then I showed you the tips and tricks here in terms of how you can access the exit from managed home screen, and how you can get logging and so on if you want to. I also mentioned to you that I was only going to show you what was happening on the dedicated device, and that there is an option to be able to manage an Android fully managed device enrolled as Android Enterprise, but I didn't show that one. You saw the UI where you could do that, and it will work with an app called Microsoft Launcher, and so you can take a look at that if you need to, right? But that's all three, right? We got it done. Windows, iOS, Android, that's Kiosk. Stay tuned. We'll have a shared PC session coming soon. So with that, we will wrap it up and see you next time.